Hello, everybody. Could I first of all thank you for the privilege of getting to speak to you today. I do apologise that I can't be there in person. Unfortunately, I just couldn't make my schedule work. But I think most of you know what NIPSA is, but maybe just give you a bit of a background just in case for those that are new to NIPSA. So we are the Northern Ireland Public Service Alliance. We are a union of civil servants, health service workers, education workers, local government, voluntary and community. So I suppose the best way to describe us is like a mushed together PCS in unison where we span right across the public services. I've been General Secretary just coming to the end of 4 years. Does feel a lot longer because quite a bit has happened in that time. I am pleased to say that in that time, NIPSA has grown by about 18% to a size now of 47,000. Now, I'd love to be able to take the credit for that, but unfortunately it's not all down to me. And much of that recruitment was done by the activity that we've been engaged in for the last, well, probably 3 years. I think probably from nearly my whole time as General Secretary, we've been engaged in action. And probably for the first time, we've been engaged in action right across the union. So every part of NIPSA was involved in activity, and most of that was all happening at the same time. It's been the most hectic period the union has ever had, and of course it falls on my watch. But I'm pleased to say that the activity that we engaged in did bring success. I'm sure you've heard of the public sector general strike that happened last year in January. Which was a coming together of the work that all the unions were doing alongside NIPSA. But I'm proud to say that with my colleagues in unison, that NIPSA was responsible for moving in second in the motion that eventually led to the strike. And we, I think, galvanised the other unions into taking actions and making sure that we were working together. And that was the biggest action that we have ever had here in Northern Ireland, and I'm glad to say that it was tremendously successful. At the time we started the action, the Assembly was in abeyance because they'd been brought down by the Assembly, been brought down by the DUP. You probably are aware that sporadically we have government here, and then more often than not we don't, as one or other of the big parties walks away. But after the strike in January, the Assembly came back within a fortnight. And I have to say that it was largely in part to the action that we took and the pressure that we put on them to come back and resolve the pay disputes that had led to the action. So not only did we get the Assembly back, but as a result of the work that we did, highlighting the underfunding of services, we also managed to make the case for additional funding from Treasury and an admission from the Treasury that Northern Ireland has been underfunded for a very long time in terms of the Barnett formula, and an admission that had been underfunded, which is why our services are in such a poor state. The other thing that we got then as a result of that was the first decent pay awards that we'd had in many, many years. So that action was tremendously successful. Then obviously last year, Labour government came into power and bought some industrial calm by giving some decent pay awards to public services, and they came here as well. So, but I think that the action that we took and the confidence that we had here enabled us to argue with our local politicians for decent awards. Now, NIPSA has still been engaged in some low-level activities since then. We haven't had an industrial action-free time since then. The action that we've been taking since then has mainly been about staffing rather than pay. One of the things, as I've said, is that our services here are significantly underfunded, and as a result, they're under-resourced. So that's what we're doing on the industrial front. But of course, in Northern Ireland, things are never entirely straightforward in terms of other politics. And one of the issues that we've been addressing over recent times is the significant increase in the influence of the far right. And as I'm sure you'll be aware, in Britain, you know, the cost of living crisis and working class communities been driven into extreme poverty has been, has fueled the lies that are being told by the far right, who blame asylum seekers, refugees, and migrant workers for the plight that they find themselves in In the north, it's even easier because, you know, that we have the longest waiting lists of anywhere in Europe in terms of health service and people waiting for operations. We have a significant housing problem because the housing executive, which is responsible for social housing here, is again significantly underfunded and hasn't been able to borrow. So one of the issues that our members who work in the housing executive, they're all NIPSA members, they've been raising issues to try and ensure that housing can be properly funded and that we can address the social housing issues. But as you know, workers and those on benefits and so on have been under extreme attack by Labour, as they had been by the Tories. So it's been an uphill battle for us to address these issues that are causing such grinding poverty, and also, as I say, allowing working class people to fall into the clutches of the far right. NIPSA has been to the forefront of all of the counter protests that have taken place. We have argued, sometimes as a lone voice in the trade union movement, I'm afraid to say, in terms of the trade union movement fronting up at these demonstrations. We have asked other trade unionists, we provide the stewards, and we have been asking for other trade unions to provide stewards so that those who are attending the counter protests and challenging the far right can do so safely. And there's no better group of people than trade unionists to steward, to know what needs to be done, to have the authority and the confidence and the experience to deal with these issues and to address any matters of concern. So we've been at the forefront, and we passed a motion at the Northern Ireland Conference of ICTU last year, asking that the trade union movement set up and train a formal stewards group to protect workers and protect migrant workers and those wishing to protest against the far right. Unfortunately, that hasn't yet happened, but for us, it's learning the lessons of history. And as people will know, in the 70s and 80s in the north here, when there were divisions and sectarian tensions arose, and families were, people were claiming their territory, and families, Catholic families who lived in Protestant areas, were forcibly moved, and vice versa. And at that stage, when pogroms were existing, we had argued then, and the party that I belong to, Militant Left, which is a sister party of the Socialist Party, we argued then for a trade union defence force, for workers to come into the aid of their fellow workers. That did get an echo. Unfortunately, it didn't build into what we would like to have seen it doing. And we believe that similar is needed now. We need workers to come together to protect other workers. And it is absolutely crucial that the trade union movement are at the forefront of that. There was a demonstration last week in Belfast. There was one in Dublin. And one of the things that we have done as NIPSA is to very clearly state that that far right activities is not just the prevail of one community. And for us, it is absolutely crucial that that message is crossed, because there is the danger that this activity degenerates into sectarianism as well as racism. So that has been the challenge for us, and that is what we are engaged in at the moment. And my hope is that we get through the next number of weeks and out the other side of July with as much peace as we can. NIPSA will continue to do what it can to defend workers, and whether that be in protests countering the far right, whether it be is to stop privatisation, which we've been engaged in our local government area, or whether it's to fight for services in health and housing and so on, that address the issues that are affecting our communities and fomenting the sectarianism and the racism that is a scourge that feeds on poverty and feeds on the fear of working class people. So I think what we're all fighting for, what NIPSA is fighting for, and we raise it loud and clear at every occasion, that it's no to racism, no to sectarianism, for decent jobs, housing and services for all. And NIPSA adds to that we're fighting for a socialist economy. We believe there is no other way that working class people can take control of their destiny and wrest the wealth from the rich. So that is now in our constitution, that we stand for a socialist economy, and I am very proud of that fact. Okay, thanks. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I hope you've enjoyed my contribution. As I say, I'm really sorry that I can't be there, but thank you for listening to me.